Hey there. So, my next guest spends a lot of this discussion talking about leadership. And I think it's a very important topic because, as entrepreneurs, we're expected usually to be the leaders of the thing that we're promoting. We're the visionary. We have to see the future and get people to want to go with us. And so, he discusses the qualities and traits of leadership like at a very granular level. I really enjoyed this one. I know you will all too. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Joshua Kell. Hey there, Joshua. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. How about yourself?
It's a cold, sunny day in New Jersey. So, but it's good.
Wonderful. All right. So, Joshua, I don't like a lot of fluff on the show. I like getting just right into it. So,
Sure.
Why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So, I am the CEO of two different companies, horizonavl. That's our integration firm. We've been an integrator for over 40 years. Basically, what we do is we design arenas, stadiums, a large group instruction, television studios, and we've been doing that for 40 years. And then several years ago, we developed a whole division to esports called esports integration. We take that 40 years of knowledge and experience in the industry, and we brought that actually to our education clients. We work with a lot of colleges and universities across the U.S. We work with over 140 of them presently, helping them build their programs, helping them with curriculum, looking at the esports industry and path. So that's a little bit about my professional side. I am an avid gamer. I do play quite a bit, World of Warcraft and the expansion and even the classic, and kind of excited about the Burning Crusade classic sort of coming back, that announcement. But yeah, I've been playing all through, well, let's see, Nintendo was home in the 80s for me and all the way up till today. Played in college, a lot of Counter-Strike, and Quake as well. So yeah, still playing a lot.
Beautiful. All right. We got a lot to talk about. Although I'm not sure how you've done anything for 40 years. You don't look that old.
Yeah, no, no, I'm not that old. So the company is 40 years. I'm approaching 40 this year. Not 40 yet. Still holding on to my 30s. So
All right. I love it. Okay. So Joshua, I start every episode with a single question. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else.
Sure.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you?
How weird am I? I would probably say I'm about 6.5. My weirdness recently, has settled down a bit over the years. A lot weirder when I was in goofy, I probably would say, back in college and high school. But yeah, sort of tamed down a little bit over the years.
All right, wonderful. Okay, now this is the Gamerpreneur podcast, so I do need your gaming cred before we kind of get to the business side of stuff.
Sure.
When did you first start playing video games?
1980, maybe 1987, 1988 is probably when I first started. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Genesis console was probably my first introduction into gaming.
Okay, so you started about the same time I did. Oh, you're just a couple years older than I am. Very cool. And you play WoW, so I have to ask, Horde or Alliance?
When I started Alliance, but now I have moved over in retail to Horde. So
is that because of everybody else who raids is as Horde, or is it just for the story? Or what is it?
It's just for the stream, actually, because a lot of our so we have actually, as you can see in the back, this is not a green screen for me. This is actually our tavern. So we actually have a studio here that looks like a World of Warcraft sort of tavern style. And so there's other machines that you cannot see, and all 5 of us play. And most of them were Horde. So I kind of got booted out on the, hey, let's do Alliance. So I followed those masses, not necessarily the MMO masses of Horde or Alliance.
I've held out. I've had my Alliance character since the very beginning.
I still have my original Alliance character. I still have him. He's sitting there. So he's a mage, and I'm a mage through and through. I had to do that even over on the Horde side of things. So
I love it. All right. So other than WoW, what else do you play, if anything?
Let's see. I was playing a lot of Division 2 recently. My son and I will play a lot of Breath of the Wild. Actually, still, we're actually going back and sort of going through glitches and things to kind of break the game right now. We're kind of exploring it from that perspective because we've beat the game on master mode and everything a long time ago. But now we're just kind of going back and seeing if we can do some of these glitches, doing that. Actually, playing a lot of Super Smash with both my kids. They now officially have gotten to the point where they can consistently beat me. So I'm actually seeing that, and it's kind of like, oh, I got to hang my hat up a bit. I guess these days are dad's getting older. So
Mine's 3, so hopefully, thankfully, I'm still better than she is. I don't know how long it'll last though.
Yeah, so they're 11 and 8. So my daughter's 8, my son's 11, and my son he can get on King K. Rool and just destroy me. There's nothing I can do. He pretty much dominates the landscape when dad plays.
For sure. Okay, and like I said, you kind of had the same access to pretty much every game I have had. If you had to pick one game as your all-time favorite, which one would it be?
Oh, all-time favorite game by far is Secret of Mana on Super NES.
Okay.
I just have a lot of memories with that game growing up. And actually, my son and we built an arcade console recently, about a year and a half ago. And we put a Raspberry Pi and emulator and all that kind of stuff. And him and I have actually started playing it on our arcade console. So I love going back. Just a lot of great memories playing that game. A lot of time into that game. A lot of time. So. Yep, definitely.
Those mana games, they're it's a love or hate it kind of thing, isn't it?
Sure,
Like
sure.
I'll admit I can't get past the first dungeon in Secret of Mana. I'm like I can't stand this game.
Steam did a remake on it, and so that was actually really cool to go through it and just kind of relive it from a new perspective of not being on a console and actually on a PC with updated graphics. But it was pretty good. So
fantastic. All right, let's hop over to the preneur part. That's enough gaming for us for now.
Sure.
Let's start out. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your professional background and how did you end up where you're at today?
Sure. So my professional background sort of stems back to actually when I was 16. When I in high school, I worked for a company. It was a small company called Command Communications, but then we were quickly sort of acquired by, it may be a partnership, I should probably say, with Intel. And we were developing PCs in hotel rooms at the time. And back then, before 2000, we didn't have laptops and all the smart devices that we have today. So traveling with content and moving that around was very difficult, right? So we were putting in PCs in hotel rooms across the U.S. And this was before really the cloud existed and anything like that, where we worked with Microsoft. We had a licensing agreement with them where we were actually moving people's data and following them. So if you were checking in one hotel and in another one that had a PC room link PC, your data would follow you, right? So all your PowerPoint presentations, your Word documents. So we were sort of developing the cloud from that perspective early on. And then the dot-com bubble burst. And so a lot of funding, a lot of things started happening from they had to downsize, and I was working specifically on the Intel LAN desk side of things, so their software side. So, there were some cuts that had to be made, and that whole division sort of dissolved. And then from there, I thought I was going to go to college. I thought that was the direction for me, and I moved out to San Diego. And I love it out there. I still miss it by a lot, especially with cold days like today. But while I was on campus, we actually started a web company. I dropped out of school. I started working on these web elements for it was the Spanish sites for like Olive Garden and Red Lobster and all that kind of stuff. And so we were doing all of that integration and that development, the website. And then we sold all of that. I sold all of that, moved back to the East Coast. And then I worked for a litigation company for a while, a support company where we were doing electronic discovery, big cases. What do we do with all this data? How do you enter into case courts? And then that's just kind of wore on me. And then I didn't know her at the time she was going to be my wife, but my girlfriend at the time was like, you should really work for my dad. He's got this great company. It's kind of techie, up your alley. And I said, well, what do they do? And she kind of explained what they do. And so I came to work for Horizon over 15 years ago now, and just worked my way up. And now I'm the CEO and taking on the next level, and just had a passion for technology. That's really my basis on all of that, right? From a professional aspect, is those experiences all through high school, and through the college elements, and then sort of doing my own thing, starting my own business, and now taking over business. All of those elements that I learned even at a high school level are now being applied to where we are today. And that was really important, because when I look back at it, I can definitely see the path, right? You can see that. But sometimes it's hard when you're at that level to see through the forest, and you're like, I don't think I'm going to go anywhere. I don't think anything is going to happen. I don't think that, the idea I potentially have is going to be worth anything at the end of the day. And so, that entrepreneur spirit, I still trudge on, right? And that's what I did. I wasn't giving up. I have very much, even today, in the esports world, I don't give up. I'm not giving up on these elements, and there are a lot of other companies in my industry, specifically from the AV side, that have already tried esports or have gotten into that world, and from a gaming perspective, and they've already given up on it because they're like, we don't see the return. They just don't see the big picture. So, that big picture mentality was developed very early on when I was working with PC Roomlink and then Intel.
Absolutely. I see it like early stage radio or television, right?
Yeah,
In the first 20 years of radio, like nobody had a radio until
that's
the
right.
fireside chat, and then everybody needed one, right? So, could you explain to me and my audience what is integration?
So integration is taking all of the components, parts, and pieces, and making them work together, right? So when we talk AV integration, we're talking about, well, you have a television, a display, a projector, or something like that, and then you've got a sound system. You need to integrate with that, right? You need to make it work seamlessly together. We get into the whole control side of things, where we have we build custom scripts, custom programming for touch panels, so that when you go into an arena or a space, you're like, I want to turn on the system. You press a button. It's doing a ton of stuff on the back end side, but to the user, it is fully integrated. All I know is I press this button and the thing works, right? So that's AV integration. Now, from the name, obviously, esports integration, we are taking all of the esports industry and we're integrating it together. So it's not just the competitive gameplay, which is always the first thing everyone kind of looks at first. But we're taking the industry elements of career paths, and we're taking curriculum, and we're taking facility planning, design, and broadcast, and all of these elements that make up the gaming and the esports industry, and we're integrating it together for clients so that they have now a clear path and understanding, basically that one button press in the esports world. Because a lot of schools, colleges, universities, high schools, they don't know where to begin. They kind of they're scratching the surface. Some are a little bit more understanding than others, but the reality is they need someone to kind of bring all this together. So that would be integration from our perspective.
Wonderful. Now, what made you decide to kind of take this leap into the esports space? I'm sure it was a little bit of a discussion. I don't know if you have a board, you had to answer to the owner. Like, what made you make that decision?
Sure. So the owner is my father-in-law. So that from the perspective was just a dialogue back and forth, right? Because he looked at it from a certain perspective and said, well, I'm trusting you. If that's what you see in the direction, then pursue it, right? And so there was some real conversation. There was challenge that was sort of met. What does this look like? Is this sustainable? And so it's really it was really a new field from our perspective of true integration and building out these spaces, right? Because at that time, you're talking 4.5, almost 5 years ago ish. there weren't really that many esports programs that were truly happening at the collegiate level, right? So you had probably the biggest notable thing at the time in the States, 2016, 2017 is Heroes of the Dorm at the collegiate level. And those 400 or whatever things, but that's put on by Blizzard at that time. And we actually give interesting statistics that 90% of the teams that competed in that were representing schools. The schools had no idea what the heck esports were. So very small, only 40 schools out of the 400 actually kind of had either an understanding or a general knowledge of it, right? And so what made us sort of leap into that was, one, a passion for gaming. I have a passion for gaming, have always had a passion for gaming. My team here, there's a lot of gamers that sort of play, not just WoW, but there's a lot of StarCraft players. There's a lot of Call of Duty players that are here. And so, I just saw this common thread in this generation, and being a parent on top of it, and the way that my kids and the students and all his friends and peers are consuming content of what they're interested in, and that direction. I'm like, well, this is kind of a no-brainer. This makes absolute sense to develop this and strengthen this from a middle school perspective, a high school perspective, a collegiate perspective, because these students and these kids are going to learn these skill sets through the vessel of esports. So let's strengthen that across the U.S. landscape. So that was really the driving force of starting esports integration.
Fantastic. Okay, so Joshua, I really tried to make the show about the advice that my guest has, and I like to focus on the guest rather than necessarily the business that they're in or what it is they're doing. So let's pull back and talk a little bit more about you. You started out kind of on this entrepreneurial journey, and you ended up at a company, and you rose through the ranks, as you said. And being a Warcraft player who's almost every single time I've joined a guild ends up in leadership position. Mm-hmm. I kind of guess that you have the qualities of leadership in you, but I'd like you to kind of tell us a little bit what you think those qualities are. What got you to where you're at today?
Sure. So there's definitely humility, in that, right? A lot of people, I think, mistake leadership for, bringing down the hammer on things and trudging through. There has to be a lot of humility, and I constantly am working on humility. I mean, that's really important to understand. So that I would definitely say that's a great quality. Also, integrity, having integrity throughout all of this, being upfront with clients, getting back to them with the right answers on time. I know we're all human, especially now today. We're inundated with so much screen time and so many elements that sort of distract. But having a level of integrity is extremely important. Being upfront with clients, and then the other thing is, as a leader, know your limitations. Don't fake it at all. That's big. Surround yourself with people that do things better than you do, and then give them the proper support. That's really, really important. I'll give an example, right? I'm a visionary from the perspective of seeing things in the future and the way things that potentially could exist in this industry or any tech field, right? I have just such an understanding and sort of a mind that thinks through those elements. How would this better society from that perspective? But what I'm not super strong in is potentially, the financial aspects of things, right? And so I have a very, very well-rounded financial a person, a controller who looks over everything in the company. Because if that were to rely on me for all the purchasing and all the accounts payable, that's just not a strong suit of mine. So know your limitations. Definitely know your limitations. It's extremely important, and it's okay to know your limitations and to own up to them, and then support that with people who do it better than you do.
Well, absolutely. Now, on that note, say you are able to identify a limitation, you need to go find someone who will be able to fill in that gap for you. how do you find that person? Is it, churn and burn? You got to like work through until you find the right one. Like
Sure.
what is the process? Cause I have a lot of guests on the show and they all say, oh, you gotta find someone who fills in those gaps. What's the
Sure.
process though? Like how can someone sitting here listening to this go, okay, well, what's my first step?
So, there has to be sort of an evaluation process when you're like interviewing. Like, actually, we're going through the process of an interview right now for a new technician for our company, right? When you sit down and you strategically ask the questions that are most important to you on those limitations that you have, right? Like, well, how you deal with finances. And if they can go into it and you can see that passion in them, that for me is number one. If I can note within that interview, within moments, and you should be able to do that, you should be able to focus and listen, right? Don't talk. That's the other thing. Don't talk during interviews. Ask the question and just listen. When you truly listen through this process, you can hear it in their tone, their voice, their excitement, their understanding. And then from there, I think that's a good foundation and a good place to begin within that evaluation process. Now, we've gone through a lot of hires here over, I'm sure my father-in-law has, and the 15 plus years I've been here, we've had a lot of people that weren't always the best fit. And I would say that would be the other thing, that they would truly understand your mission. Not only are they passionate about whatever element that they bring, but can they clearly articulate your mission and your goal? Because when they can, they are then a team player at that point. They are now aligning with from the head down. Right? The body is working together. It's not disjointed. It's not the head is saying one thing, but then the arm and the feet are saying, no, we're going to go in a different direction. It's all in the same direction. And that's sort of the process in which we can sort of then determine, okay, you are truly an individual aligning with our mission and our goal, and you see it. Sometimes that also brings opposition as well, and they challenge it. And sometimes that's actually should be somewhat, in some ways, a welcome and understood, because that then goes back to the humility and the integrity elements where you're doing a check, right? Is this really a good direction to go in? Is this where do I have everything set? Do I have that direction clearly defined? And sometimes they challenge me, especially like my C-suite. We meet once a week, and there have been challenges. Like they've thrown up the challenge flag and said, oh, is that something we should really do? And then we explore it deeper. And it's not that they're challenging you in a perspective of, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. Is this really a good direction and course we should be going with, in sort of the devil's advocate mindset, right? They're playing that role. That's how you have a very good person that will support you. That it's their abilities, they see the mission, but then they can help you walk through that development of the mission.
I love it. That's a fantastic answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get a little more personal if possible.
Okay.
Let's say that we're able to hop in a time machine. You and I, we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back to when Joshua Kell was just getting out of high school, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, the whole world at his fingertips, right? And you're going to be able to go up to him and you're going to be able to explain everything that's going to happen in his life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the triumphs. You're going to be able to give him all of your knowledge and insights that you've gotten over the years. But if there was one thing he had to know to make it bigger, badder, faster, more profitable, whatever you think success would be for him, what would that one thing be?
Persistence. Absolutely persistence. Because if I look back in time, just being persistent in something, not just having that drive, that's extremely important. The younger you are, the older you get, that you obviously develop that over time, being persistent about something and then following through and seeing it through. So I would definitely say, what does that look like for younger me? It would be persistent in whatever the endeavor is.
All right, fantastic. kind of a related note. You
Okay.
see, Joshua, I believe that we learn the most in our life from our failures, not necessarily our successes. Because when you succeed the first time at something, you may not know what happened, right? You just kind of, yeah, I did it. But if you fail, you got to take a look at it. You got to figure out what went wrong to be able to move past it and move forward. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
I would say management of time is probably one of my biggest failures. And that extends not only from the business side, but the personal side. More time with family, more time with people around me that surround me, that support me. That for me, I mean, I can look at business failures and sort of pluck them out, right? Those are easy. Because you can, I think those are easily looked at and evaluated and say, hey, we shouldn't have done this. We should have gone back and done it this way. But when we're talking about philosophy and we're talking about individual adoption of failure, that's how I sort of look at it, is definitely the management of time with individuals, that it's not all the work all the time. There needs to be a balance of that. And trust me, I very much, and I have a wonderful wife that does check me on that all the time. Your time with your family and your kids, and time outside of work, because you can then dedicate a lot of time to work. And I do. And she's very gracious, and she's very understanding of what the company's goals and directions are. But early on in my career, it was all work, and it was very little time with family. And your family and the people that are around you that support you are there to support you, so you need to support them with your time, and that you are paying attention to them, and that you're involved with them, because businesses come and go, ideas come and go, but that getting back time, you'll never get it back, never. So that for me is probably one of my biggest failures in the past that I've looked at, and I'm constantly striving to correct.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with.
Yeah.
Kind of on the flip side, what is something that you're working to improve on yourself today?
I would definitely say today, with the expansion of the business and everything that's happening, is probably more support. How do I support my team members? Not support for the company, but my support for them. How do I interact more and more with all of my employees and all the team members on the different tasks? How am I propping them up, right? As a leader, it's not just follow me. It's also, I need to make sure that you're well equipped, and I want to make sure that you have the best tools for your job, because I know you're going to do your job well. And so, things that we're definitely working on, and I'm from the top down, from my perspective, is more support for my team members, because that's only going to make and strengthen the company better in the long run.
Fantastic. Okay. Joshua, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you so much. How do people find you? Where are you at in social media? Contact information, all that, please.
Sure. So you can follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, Instagram, horizonavl, or Esports Integration, one or the other. We have several different Twitter handles. My personal one is at AVL Kell. So audio, video, lighting, Kell, my last name. Horizon AVL is our Horizon AVL Twitter feed, and then havl Esports, HAVL Esports, is our Esports Integration Twitter. So you can follow us on any one of those.
Beautiful. All right. So as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
Oh, I think it was a great interview.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. I genuinely do appreciate you coming on and taking the time with us today.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.